Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another one of our ABE Day Webinar Wednesdays. Is your resident ABE Day facilitator, Ron Cruz. Thank you again for spending a precious time during your day to hear about the curriculum matrix. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our webinar. Before we begin, I just wanted to remind everybody that if you have any question, you can type it into the Q&A tab. So by clicking on the Q&A tab at the top of your screen, dialog box will open and you can input your question in the section that says please input your question and hit send. And that way I'll be able to receive your questions and I will respond to them as we go along. Some of these questions may also be responded to by our ABE Day director, June Roll, and also Joseph Reed, who's in the background monitoring your questions. Of course, your microphones will be muted for purposes that, to solidify the focus of this webinar. And also, today's presentation is being recorded. It will be archived and will be available for further viewing or reviewing within 48 hours of this webinar. All right, so let's go over some of our agenda for today. So we're going to start off with reinforcing the importance of the matrix, but this time, in this part 2 of this webinar, I am going to go over the importance of the matrix and how the CCRS really hits that target very strongly. In the previous webinar that we talked about, we covered several things, how I developed the matrix, how the matrix correlates with your curriculum frameworks. We talked about some of the benefits to the teacher and the students, and then we described different uses of the matrix in terms of creating a student profile, a small group profile, or a class profile, and then learning trajectories. But this time, I'm going to really show you the complete alignment between this matrix and the Florida ABE Mathematics Curriculum Frameworks. Also, I'm going to go over how this curriculum curriculum matrix, aligns to the TABE 11 and 12 blueprints that has been recently released to us. There are also going to be some time where, as we discussed, it's going to show up more benefits to the teacher and student. So I'm going to go over that as well. And then I'm going to review again the various overlays that is in development. And then towards the end, we're going to have a little bit more time for Q&A and also to complete a short evaluation of this webinar. All right, so let's get started. So first, I'm going to show you how to open your electronic copy of the ABE Math Curriculum Matrix. So you all have this available at your fingertips. All you have to do is go to the ABE Day website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of the presentation mode of my PowerPoint, and I'm going to lead you to the ABE Day website. So right now, if you first type in floridaabday.org, you will land in this landing page. So in this landing page, you're going to go into ABE or to the ABE channel. And then once that channel has been loaded, you're going to go into the webinar section. So if you click on the webinar section, you must find ABE Math Curriculum Matrix Part 1 and Part 2. So that's pretty much what you're going to see right there. But since we are in the part 2 of the webinar, we're going to go ahead and click the part 2. Once you click that, of course, you will be able to download the presentation in PDF version. So if you want to review all of my PowerPoint presentation that I prepared for you this afternoon, it also has the ABE curriculum matrix right here. So if you click on that, and that's what I did right now, it's going to load the curriculum matrix, the electronic version of the curriculum matrix. Please keep in mind that if you plan to print this, you must print this on an 11 by 17. That's how this PDF version was designed. So it's an 11 by 17 sheet of paper or printer paper. It's also called a tabloid sheet. So if you have that available, you can print it there. But pretty much you can work with this curriculum matrix in its electronic version. On the electronic version, of course, this you cannot see, you can hardly see the writing in each of the cell, and you can always click that plus sign at the bottom right of your browser, and that will allow you to zoom into a particular section of the map. You can scroll left and right to go to the various levels, and you can go scroll down to go and view the other domains. Of course, what you can do and what you want to do if you want to annotate or shade or highlight from this matrix, you're going to have to download the matrix into your computer. So you can do that by downloading clicking on the download icon at the upper right hand corner of your browser if you're using Google Chrome. So if you click on that, it will allow you to open it in Acrobat Reader, which will also allow you to highlight, draw, type additional text and things like that, which I believe that you're going to start working on as you start using the matrix. All right, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully you've already downloaded your own copy or electronic version. If not, you can download it later, because you're viewing the webinar, you're not going to be able to see both unless you split your screen, which will also make my screen smaller. So I really just want you to focus on my PowerPoint presentation at the moment. So if you haven't downloaded it by now, I suggest you download it later. Okay. Moving along, so just like I said, I'm going to go over some of the alignment or the correlation of the ABE Math Curriculum Matrix to the college and career readiness standards. Before I do that, I want to just go over the very important shifts that the college and career readiness standards indicate for mathematics. So there are three major shifts in the standards, and it's written right in front of your screens. It's the three key shifts are focus, coherence, and rigor. And under rigor, there are three components to that has to be satisfied in order for rigor to be present. It has to have an even distribution between conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, and also application. So let's start with the first shift, focus. Focus means we focus strongly where the standards focus, and that's how it's written on the college and career readiness standards. So what does that imply? What does that mean to us instructors? So that means we need to narrow significantly. We have to narrow the content significantly to deepen the manner in which we teach the mathematics. So we're no longer teaching a mile wide and then an inch deep, but rather deeper and going deeper into the teaching of the mathematics. We focus on the major works at each level, so that we kind of narrowed it down to which of the major works or which are the major skills that are going to translate into GED prep or to vocational technical training. And then it also tells us to make sure that we select priority content that addresses clear understanding. And if you use the matrix to your advantage, you will be able to select priority content because it is only narrowing it down all into the major benchmarks. So let me explain that for a minute. So if we're looking at the upper left section, so I copied and pasted the upper left section of the matrix, and that's what you're looking at on your screen. So how do I say, okay, we focus on certain things here? So let's take, for example, the bottommost skill at both level 1 and level 2. And what you will notice is both of these skills both of these cells pertain to the same standard and benchmark. So meaning we're both teaching place value of 2-digit numbers. So now, that's pretty much like tells me, okay, this is kind of like my starting point. If I wanted to teach and I have students starting from 0, or I have students struggling with multiplication and facts, or even just addition equations, if I wanted to review their skills, I want to start from the beginning and make sure that they have a very clear understanding of place value. So we'll start off with two-digit place value of 2-digit, 3-digit, and then multi-digit numbers. Once I've done that, that's the only time I can go over some of the other major works. And those are comparing, rounding, addition and subtraction, and also modeling or constructing models. So as you can see, I've highlighted the initial topic that we've taught in red, in the red box, and then the next set of topics that I'm supposed to be teaching that will build upon the concept of place value are the ones in yellow. And those are summarized according to comparing numbers, rounding 2- and 3-digit numbers, adding and subtracting through 2- or 3-digit numbers, and then modeling that addition and subtraction in a way that students can see it visually. And then last but not the least, all of these skills are going to lead into higher level skills, and pretty much the higher level skills that we're trying to bridge to is really the properties of operations, and more importantly, the solving equations. That is the major part of any standardized test. Major part of what we do in ABE Math is solve equations. So in here, as you see, it highlighted in very light greenish or aquamarine color boxes. Those are now the topics that are you're supposed to teach next after the topics or the cells that are in yellow. So let me just review this again. So you start with the cells that are boxed in red, followed by the skills that are boxed in yellow, and then you go into the cells that are boxed in light green or aquamarine color. So that gives us kind of like a big picture view of like, oh, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. I am teaching them place value so that they can compare numbers. They know what to do when I ask them to round to the hundredths, or they know how to add and subtract. So those addition and subtraction algorithms that I'm teaching them make sense because I understand place value, and also create that secondary visual representation through modeling. If we do a very solid teaching in these 3 stages, students will have a very strong foundation and conceptual understanding of solving equations. So that's the first one. So the focus kind of illustrates that, narrowing down to the most important skills, but not really leaving behind the more foundational skills, so that students have a very clear conceptual understanding of what they're trying to accomplish. So now let's go into coherence. Coherence states that we design learning around coherent progressions from level to level. And the implication of that to the teachers is that we must create coherent progressions in the content within and across levels. So that means that we are not only, we're not really jumping from levels 1, 3, the NRS levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. You don't have to really teach level 1 first and then level 3. There are going to be some overlaps here and there so that you create a coherent progression, and that's going to be shown in the next slide with this. And I actually kind of already alluded to it on the previous slide when we saw this. So when we saw this, as you can see, I'm jumping across level 1 and level 2, depending on where my students are. So if my students are in level 1, we're only doing 2-digit operations, comparing, rounding, addition, and subtraction, and then also modeling. But if my student is at a level 2 NRS level based on their test, then I need to be working with them on the same scales, but we're working on 3-digit numbers. Another implication of that to teachers is that we need to establish strong conceptual understanding of core content. More importantly, use the standards at a higher level as extension of previous learning rather than signaling a new concept or idea. So I'm going to go back to that slide again and reinforce this next 2 bullet points. So as you can see in here on our previous slide, that's what I did is I used the previous or the initial cells leading into the green box cells here. All right. So now let's look at some examples here on conceptual. Another way to look at it is also the bouncing across domains and how the domains kind of signal to you which one do I have to teach first. Okay, so let's start off with just looking at the upper left corner of your curriculum matrix. If you look at that, we all start with place value, and then we do all of that modeling and rounding and adding and subtracting, and that's really leading into these cells at the bottom right here. So once we've added and subtracted 2-digit numbers, then we can reinforce the concept of the equal sign, and then we can reinforce now leading into equations. Just to show it, just to give you a broader picture of how that plays out on the curriculum matrix, we start off with covering the first 2 domains first, and that's kind of like what I really suggest, is starting with the first 2 domains, which is number operations and base 10 and algebraic thinking, because those foundational skills in these 2 domains are actually being used in this domain, which is the expressions and equations domain. And our knowledge of the expression and the skills in other questions yet, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't type in any questions. So if you have any questions, just feel free to type it in and using your Q&A tab, and then just type the question and I'll answer them as I see them. All right, so now we're going to look at the comparison between the ABE Math matrix and the curriculum frameworks that we have. So let's look at that. So I'm going to take a quick poll. What you're going to do is just use your Q&A tab, type the letter A, type the letter B, C, or D, based on your answer here. How much time, according to you, how much time do you have you spent reviewing this document? So let me give you a little bit of time to kind of type in how much time have you actually read, studied, looked at the structure of our curriculum frameworks. And we're going to be honest here. I do have a little bit of an expectation, but I wanted to see what, how much time have people invested looking at this document. So I'm looking at it. Okay, so we've got lots of D's so far, B's and C's. So really and truly, not a lot of us have spent a lot of time in this document, and there's a reason behind that. So the reason behind that is not all of us are directly working in curriculum or are really trained with an eyes to really look and understand this. Some of us in adult education, we came into this field sideways from the private sector, and then some of us are from K-12 that are doing part-time hours in adult basic education, or some of us are actually full-time adult basic education. But even those full-time adult basic education teachers really find very, very little time to really spend on this. A lot of your curriculum facilitators, a lot of your resource teachers, your curriculum specialists are really the ones that are really looking at this document in great detail and studying it, and then hopefully they're translating it in a more readable document or a simplified document for you. Fortunately, as a state, we've kind of embarked into this into this role as to, okay, well, let's make it easier for the curriculum expert. I mean, let's make it easier for the classroom teachers to readily see the curriculum frameworks, okay? So, so that's really what it is. And there's a lot more reasons that goes along that I may not have mentioned here in this webinar. So, if we look at it, this document right here, the ABE Mathematics Curriculum Frameworks, it is just a framework. It's not a curriculum per se. It has all of the components you need for a curriculum, but that's not really a curriculum per se. You still have to do a little bit of work on it in order for it to transform into a real curriculum. So this document that you're looking at, you can download it directly from the FDOE website. It's a 31-page document. So it's a huge document. It's not really organized in a way that that's user-friendly. So you have to really understand how it's oriented so that you know what you're looking at. So that's part of it. The curriculum framework does have this useful mini matrix, as I would say. There's a mini matrix here that shows us the distribution of the domains across each NRS level. And I saw a question earlier, what does NRS level mean? Well, this is the perfect opportunity for me to explain that. NRS stands for National Reporting System. That's the feds. That's where we submit all of our enrollment, all of our performance data. And they're the ones who kind of aggregate this data for us. They're usually the ones, I mean, they are the ones, not usually, but they are, the ones that release the levels at what scale scores do students have to be to belong in each of the levels. And what are the skills, descriptive of each level. So they're the ones who release that. Okay, so if you're not used to looking at NRS levels, because this is how we kind of group our students in ABE, you could also look at them as grade levels. So the first two grade levels, grade 1 and grade 2, belongs to NRS level 1. Grades 2 grades 3 and 4 belongs to NRS level 2. Grades 4 and 5, and then 6 to 8. So there's 2 grade levels at each one in each of the individual intervals of the NRS. So overall, this picture shows you, okay, I see that geometry is taught across the level. That's really good. Numbers and operations and fractions, oh, I see that. I teach that at a level 2, and then continue to teach that to the student that is becoming a level 3. And then I also see the more important part is like, oh, okay, I don't have to teach expressions and equations until they reach NRS level 3. So that's really some, a good indicator for you is like, when is the right time for me to introduce a topic to my students? The best way to do that is to look at this mini matrix, is to, okay, that's the time. So because if you introduce the standards of expressions and equations to your students that are not ready for it, they're most likely going to get confused. And if they're confused, they're going to forget about it. And if they forget something and then you review it the next day, they get frustrated because they feel like they didn't learn anything. And you get frustrated because you feel like you didn't do a good job teaching the previous day. So really and truly, paying attention to these little aspects of the curriculum frameworks really pays well when in the long run, when you're really planning where you're at in your instruction. But this mini matrix does not give you the big picture. It's like, okay, well, yes, I'm teaching expression and equation starting at level 3 or at the 4th grade, but what about it? And what do I have to leave out for level 4? When are they going to be ready? So that really is introduced to you by the curriculum matrix. So just to give you an idea of how many standards are packed in each of the domains, there's actually a total of 9 standards across domain 1 or number operations. And then there's 14, that's 10 plus 4, 14 standards that are included in operations and algebraic thinking, and there is 13 in measurement and data, and so on and so forth. And you can see there are lots of standards in each one. And then in addition to that, there are, well, just to give you an idea, if you add this all up, there are a total of 79 standards contained in our curriculum frameworks. 79 huge standards. In each of the standards, there are benchmarks underneath. So in each benchmark, if you count the benchmarks that are contained in each of the domains, it really amplifies the number even more. So if you look at here, there are 19 benchmarks across level 1 and level 2 of number and operations, and then there are 15 benchmarks across level 3 of number and operations. And then moving on to the next domain, there are 21 benchmarks at level 1 and level 2 under operations and algebraic thinking, and then there are 11 for level 3, and so on and so forth. So I gave you this chart because I want you to kind of see that you are supposed to teach 294 benchmarks, in a span of the ABE, in the span of the ABE life of a student. This is all the benchmarks that you have to teach. That's a lot. And that's a lot to pay attention to, because certain benchmarks are divided because because that's how it's written in the college and career readiness standards. But really, who has time to look and dig in 294 benchmarks? I don't, because I'm not, we don't have, in adult education, we don't get paid planning time as much. So we really wanted to make sure that your time is being used to the fullest. So that's why we created this curriculum matrix for you. So now if you look at the curriculum framework, the curriculum matrix, all 79 standards and all 294 benchmark are now summarized into 163 topics and cells that are organized in a beautiful matrix, separated across NRS levels, and then segregated according to the domain they pertain to. So now we're talking, right? So in here we see a document that spells out everything. I don't have to flip through 31 pages. I don't have to figure out where I'm at. This is where this is kind of like you're going to live and breathe this document. Okay, so how much of this aligns with our curriculum framework? So that's what I'm going to show you. So the right side of your screen shows what's actually written on the curriculum frameworks, okay? And then on the left side is the cells that was taken from the math matrix. And what I did was combine multiple benchmarks together that can be combined, and separated the ones that I cannot combine anymore. So really my goal is to make it simpler for you, chunk the benchmarks together so that you're not going through 200, over 200, close to 300 benchmarks and sorting your way through that. So now if you're looking at this, this is a slice of the statistics domain. So I picked statistics because this is something that a lot of teachers, according to our surveys, are really struggling in teaching. So I picked this one. So as you can see, if you look at the first two cells from the statistics section of your matrix, that really is a direct lift or directly taken from the combination of the first two benchmarks in 3.1. And then the third cell of your statistics section of the curriculum matrix pertains to benchmark C of 3.1. And then as you can see, the last cell, see how much it combines. So it combines the benchmarks, but even the subsection in each benchmark, such as dot plots, histograms, and box plot, are all just combined together into one cell so that you're not looking at all these things together. Because what you're really technically doing is you're doing the same thing, you're just repeating it into different data representation, dot plots, histograms, box plot. All you're doing is to displaying a numerical data on a number line. So hopefully this will give you a clue as to how I've kind of derived the curriculum matrix from the curriculum frameworks. So now I'm going to stop right here and just entertain some of your questions as well. Okay. All right, I really like this question. So I'm going to read this verbatim because it's going to lead us into the next discussion. Of course, we should not teach you the test, but when we discuss narrow and deeper, how do we make sure the TABE test will be testing more narrow and deeper and blah, blah, blah? Students seem to do better on test scores when they have a broad knowledge rather than narrow knowledge. Increasing to TABE 11 and 12 seems problematic when students are struggling with basic concept and procedures. That is true. This is all very true. Okay? So I really agree to what you just typed in here. Okay, so I'm going to answer it live, and that leads us into the next, is the TABE. So really what we're doing is not really teaching to the test because I did not lift the curriculum frameworks from the TABE test. Okay, I lifted the curriculum matrix from the curriculum frameworks. I lifted the curriculum matrix directly from the college and career readiness standards because these are the standards that spell out every single thing, every single skill, every single concept that everyone has to learn in ABE. If I narrow my focus and lifted it directly from TABE 11 and 12, then it will miss out those gaps. And it's so really true that you pointed it out. Thank you very much for sharing that comment and question. So now let's talk TABE. So TABE has released the TABE assessment blueprints. These blueprints, by the way, you can download it directly from the section, from the handout section of this webinar, at the same place where you downloaded your curriculum matrix. You can download these too. And each one level test, level E, M, D, and A, each of those tests, blueprints are also in there, and they're published separately, okay? So what I did is in this case, I'm just gonna take the blueprint and see how it correlates to the curriculum matrix. So I took the number and operations in base 10 blueprint, and I think this one is level E test. So if what I did was I created an overlay or a shading on my curriculum matrix to show, okay, well, if you look at this, it shows the standard and description. So I kind of did a little bit of matching. Some of them, could be phrased the same. Some have the slight difference in phrasing, but they almost mean the same thing. The more important thing is to look at that last column where it says emphasis level. Well, TABE indicates to us at which emphasis level does each standard falls under. So for example, standard 2 NBT1 or standard 2 numbers and operations in base 10 standard 1 has a low emphasis level. Whereas the third standard of MBT1 is medium, and then 2 NBT2 is also medium, and then go on and so forth. And there are going to be some that also are going to have high, and you're going to see it in the next example. And what I did with my curriculum map is I colored them out. So I darkened the ones that are medium, and then I used a lighter color on the low emphasis. So, and as you can see, level 1, level 2 of our number and operations in base 10 from the matrix are all covered by TABE 11 and 12 test E. Now let's look at number, operations, and fractions. I took that section and then I correlated it with the level 2. With the level E test. And according to the TABE blueprint, these are the 3 things that are tested. a medium for 3NF1, medium emphasis on 3NF2, and high emphasis on 3NF3. And I did the same thing. So for the sections that are medium emphasis, it's colored light gray. And then for the high emphasis, it's dark gray. But look, there is a section there that is not colored at all. It is kind of like the lightest shade of gray there because my slide is gray. So it's a poor choice of color, but I wanted to show the correlation between the colors of the TABE uses and what I used for the map. As you can see, that section is not tested on the test at all, which answers the question directly that was raised, that yes, you still have to teach that even though it's not tested. And you have to teach that at this level. Then moving on, I did the same thing to operations and algebraic thinking. Same thing. As you can see, the the medium level emphasis are the dark yellows, the light yellows are the low emphasis, and then the ones that remain gray or uncolored are the ones that is not tested on the TABE test at this level E test. So pay attention to when I say not tested at this level. So even though distributive property of multiplication is not tested at level E, it may be tested directly at the next level, at the M level, okay? And also, based on conversations with, based on what I know already or the part of knowledge that I know about the TABE test, some of these skills may only be secondary. They're not tested directly, but is a skill necessary to lead to the final answer. So really, there is no section that asks, okay, apply the distributive property on blah, blah, blah. But there might be an equation that students have to solve that in order to solve correctly, they have to do a distributive property they have to apply distributive property, okay? Or they might ask the student, okay, which of these expressions are equivalent to another expression? So it's not a direct assessment of the distributive property, but it is being applied to the distributive property. So it may not be worded the same. And I think this is the last one, is the geometry. So there are 4 standards that is tested on TABE test E. And there's medium and low, and I also show you the difference in the contrast of the shading to show which ones have low emphasis and which are heavy emphasis. So really, you can start doing this on your own copy of the matrix. But wait a minute. You didn't give us a blank copy of the matrix. The matrix that you have is already been colored. So good thing, if you go back to the previous webinar, the part 1, the part 1 webinar has the blank colored matrix. So you can add the coloring yourself. Or if you plan to do it electronically, you can also highlight each cell using Acrobat Reader and then color them however you want. I just prefer to color and follow kind of like the same color scheme as the TABE test. Oh, and then we got one more, measurement and data. I did the same thing. The darker colors are the high. The lighter one, the slightly lighter one would be the medium, and then the really light ones are the low. In this case, all of the cells that we have in the matrix are directly tested on TABE level E. All right, I'm going to stop right here. We've got about a few more minutes here to answer some of the questions that you may have. Okay, I have a question here. What is the difference between TABE level A and D? Okay, so I'm going to answer this question live rather than typing the answer. Okay, so TABE is the TABE test is separated according to level test, and we have level. It starts with level E, followed by M, and followed by D, and then followed by A. Supposedly, each of the level tests correlates to each of the NRS level, but not really. There's kind of like an overlap there between the score, and this is not really a TABE training for me to be talking about it, but this is my kind of my clue, okay? So E stands for easy. So that's the lowest level test. M stands for medium, okay, or middle level test, okay? And then D stands for difficult. And then the most difficult test, we call it advanced, and so we assign the letter A. So that's kind of how each of the TABE test levels are assigned. So your A would be, your E will be easy, M will be medium, D will be difficult, and then A would be advanced. Okay, I do not know. There is a question here where it says, what does 12.9 mean on TABE 11 and 12? I don't quite understand what you mean by this, so you may have to elaborate a little bit more. I don't know where you're getting the 12.9 from. Okay, so if you can just use the Q&A tab to really narrow down on your question, or just clarify that a little bit for me and where you get that number. Okay, so we're gonna move on a little bit here. Oh, wait a minute, I have some chat questions, and hopefully there are. So, okay, there's somebody that came in late that didn't know how to download the matrix. We answered that question for you, but if I have a little time in the end, I'm going to show that to you again. All right, so, okay, we've got additional questions. Oh, grade level equivalence. Okay, so I see that. So that's what it is the 12.9 really is pertaining to the grade level equivalent. Okay, so that means 12th grade. Okay, so there's another question here. Where can I find the matrix, the standards, the blueprints for the TABE test for the A level test? Well, I'm going to show that to you in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to show all of that, and all the next questions are on the tape. So I believe I can get out and exit out of this screen and answer that question now, rather than wait later. So I better answer that question now. So if you go into, and this will answer all of the questions that you've had previously, where you said, how can I download the matrix? Where do I get the TABE blueprints? Well, you get it straight from this webinar. I made it easy for you. I downloaded it for you, and then I posted it on the webinar section. So all you have to do from the IPDAY website, www.floridaipday.org, you click on the ABE tab, and then the channels pop up. You click on the webinars channel. Hopefully I'm not doing this too fast. So click on the webinar, and then go to part 2 of the ABE Math Matrix, or Curriculum Matrix. All right? From there, you go into the presentation documents. The second one on the list from the top, where it says ABE Math Curriculum Matrix PDF, that is the matrix. That is the colored version of your matrix, okay? Now, where do you get the blueprints? They're all right here, okay? So there we have the level E for easy. The M is right here at the bottom. Blueprint. The D is right here. Fourth from the bottom, and then you also have the A test, which is 5th from the bottom. Okay, and there is also a level L test. I forgot to mention that. The TABE Math Blueprint for level L, and L stands for literacy level. So those students that are below NRS level 1 are using or right at at the lower levels or the lower scale scores of NRS level 1, they are tested with the TABE blueprint. TABE test L. Okay, now again, this is not a TABE training. I'm very happy to let you know that around in the fall, we are going to roll out, IPDAY is going to roll out an online TABE training where you can go over and really learn all of these nuances on the level tests and the scale scores at each test and the out of range scores. Then we're going to talk about that in that online training piece. Please make sure that you have a portal account. If you don't have a portal account, you won't be able to access it. So, and we will let you know, and towards the end of this month, we'll do another webinar to kind of go over what are these things that's cooking up for you in the fall, and we'll have more information for you as the exact release date of this e-training or online module for the TABE certification. All right, so hopefully I've answered most of the questions here. Okay, I've answered this one, and I answered that one. Okay, all right, so I'm moving on to the next component of our webinar. Okay, so considering how much you already know about the matrix, think about how you would use this in your classroom. I'm just thinking about it and reflecting on the matrix. I can think of multiple things. And I would, if you have missed our previous webinar from last week, I really strongly suggest you watch that webinar if you have not been to that webinar, because that really talks about the real applications of this matrix in the classroom. So now I'm going to go over some of the other additional benefits to the teacher. One is that the matrix is really a handy guide for you. It allows you to really prioritize your instruction. I have to teach this first, or this is what I'm going to teach next week or next month. So you can create a map. You can write on this map and write dates or write timelines. So it really gives you an idea. I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to pace myself in order for me to cover all the content I need prior to post-testing. So that's one. Another thing is it allows you to differentiate your instruction. Where are my students at? What do I have to teach to this group of students versus that group of students? Do I see any parallelism in the skills, just like what I showed you earlier with place value? So there's a difference between level 1, level 2 students. So where level 1 student, I'm doing place value, but it's on 2-digit numbers. And on my level 2 students, I'm doing it with 3-digit numbers. The curriculum matrix shows every skill, concept, topic, blah, 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 everything but the kitchen sink is in your matrix. So if you use your matrix, you're really covering the entire core of the college and career readiness standard, every single anchor standard, and every single benchmark in your curriculum frameworks. And then also, the matrix, just to summarize everything, just like I showed you earlier, highlights every standard that is tested on the TABE 11 and 12 and more. Okay? All right, so here's just what's coming soon. I'm really very excited to roll this out, and we are coming up with a more electronic and interactive version of this matrix. So soon, if they will be housing this matrix in its full majesty, and then it's going to be on the website, and then all you have to do is hover on top of the cell. So if you hover, let's say, on this cell, it will pop up a dialog back that shows you the exact wording of the standards lifted directly from the curriculum frameworks. It will show you all of the standards and benchmarks that have been combined all together into that one cell. So really gives you more information than it is. Keep in mind, the matrix in itself to use for teaching is good as a tool, but that shouldn't be the only one you're looking at. You're also looking at your resources. You're also looking at the standards, from the college and career readiness standards, because it really breaks it down to you to the minute level of each benchmark. The matrix is just kind of like a more simplified, generalized tool. Okay, and in addition to that, if you click on each of these cells, it will allow you to draw from a bunch of lessons, different links to content sites, toolkits, videos, even webinars that pertain directly to that standard, or even workshops where that standard or that topic was covered. You'll have a link there. So what becomes the matrix becomes now an interactive map where you can see your standards, you can see your benchmarks, and then if you don't have a clue, okay, how do I teach this? What does this look like? Where do I start? Or I need materials on this particular topic. Well, we'll have that ready for you in links, and you can download all you want and use it all you want. So that's really coming soon. So watch out and please stay tuned for that. So in addition to those, of course, I'm also going to release I only showed you little bits and sections on the alignment to the TABE blueprints. So I will have different overlays. There will be a level E overlay, level A overlay, level D overlay on the TABE. Also, for all of you that teach both ABE and GED, will develop an overlay of high impact indicators. Which of these skills lead into the high impact indicators? Which of these are necessary, or the foundational skills for these high impact indicators that they pertain to on the GED test? More than that, we're also going to develop a performance level descriptor overlays for GED. So that's really coming soon. And then I also talked about in the previous webinar that you can, we're going to develop some overlays in terms of various careers. Let's just say carpentry. What skills are essential or that's directly being applied into that career technical field of carpentry? We're going to do that and highlight that overlay so that if you have a cohort of students that are majority moving into, let's say, the health field or licensed practical nursing or cosmetology or maybe as specific as carpentry, then you will have kind of like a good overlay to look at, like, whoa, these are the skills that I need to spend more time on because this is what they're really using in these careers. It adds a lot more relevance to the instruction that you teach. And I can guarantee you, if you teach to their needs, they're most likely going to attend class more often. They're all most likely going to remember a lot of the things that you're actually teaching them. And then there's also a lot other things such as various thematic approaches. We covered this during the face-to-face GED trainings that we did in like last year. So we're going to do the same thing with these little overlays. And then, of course, what I went over last webinar is the learning trajectory. So that's also included into the set of overlays that we're trying to develop for your blueprints. For your curriculum matrix. All right, so I've got a couple of minutes here. So hopefully I don't have a lot of questions hanging here. I have... Okay, these are really TABE questions, so I'm not going to answer the TABE question. Okay, wow. So there are somebody saying that, oh, I'm very excited on the upcoming matrix. Thank you very much for the hard work, saving us the time and give actual teaching back to us. That's really the goal here, is for you to not spend time belaboring and looking at this the standards, going through 31 pages without having the proper lens to look at is really our ultimate goal here. So thank you very much for sharing that feedback. So really appreciate that. So we've got a minute left. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to poll you. Let me take a minute of your time. A window will pop up. Please click on the radio buttons. Complete the survey for a minute. Your feedback is really important to us. It helps us design future webinars for you. So really, please take the time to complete the feedback form. Click it. Once you clicked it, you're done. There's really no submit button there. It's automatically going to close. Just make sure before it closes that you click on every radio button. All right. Lots of thank yous over here. Very good. Thank you for your feedback. All right. So I think, all right. So now that I think everybody's pretty much done with the poll, I just wanted to say thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon. I really appreciated your participation. Please check out the workbook, the activity book that I created alongside this webinar, so you can do your own little PLC meetings or for your own self-study. That online activity book you can download it into your hard drive and start using that, because that's really going to extend your learning of this and being more familiar with the matrix. So soon to come, and we'll incorporate this matrix in a majority of our work coming into the next year. Thank you very much, and see you in our next webinar.